49 seconds. That is all it took. 49 seconds for Marjorie Taylor Greene to sit in complete silence after Congressman Chuck Edwards set 3 documents on the table, looked at her across the room, and asked one question that 227 dead Americans had already answered. You posted that map while my constituents were still being pulled from the water. Now explain it. Not a legal argument, not a partisan attack, just a map, a death toll, and a Republican congressman from the district that was still underwater asking a fellow Republican to justify what she said about the storm that killed his neighbors. Watch what happens when Edwards reads her posts out loud in sequence. Watch Greene's face. Watch her attorneys exchange a look that says, this was not the room they prepared for. And watch 49 seconds of silence from a woman who had no trouble posting 7 words about weather control while rescue helicopters were still flying over the mountains of North Carolina. You need to see this until the very end, because what Edwards uncovered in that hearing room is not about science. It is not about meteorology. It is about a specific choice made at a specific moment, while people were dying, while families were waiting for news, while rescue workers were pulling bodies from floodwater. Someone decided that moment was the right moment to post a map suggesting the storm had been engineered to target their voters. And the person who made that choice is sitting 3 feet away from the man whose constituents were in that water. If you are new to this channel, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. This hearing just became the most important testimony of the year, and you need to see every second of what happened next. Let me set the scene for you. House Oversight Committee, Room 2154. Tuesday morning, 10:33 a.m. Eastern Time. The room had a quality to it that none of the previous hearing rooms in this series had carried. Those rooms had been charged with the electricity of political confrontation, of documents and voting records and financial disclosures. This room was quieter than that, heavier than that. The weight of 227 people who were dead, of thousands more who had lost everything, of a disaster that had hit hardest in the mountains of western North Carolina, in communities that had never been the center of national attention and suddenly found themselves on every news channel, not because of what they had done, but because of what a storm had done to them. And sitting in that room was the man who represented those communities, not performing outrage, not building a political case. Just a congressman from a mountain district in North Carolina who had watched his constituents suffer and had then watched a colleague use their suffering as the backdrop for a conspiracy theory. Chuck Edwards was not in that room to score points. He was in that room because something needed to be said and nobody else was going to say it. Edwards arrived first. He sat down and he placed 3 documents on the table in front of him. He did not open them. He looked at them for a moment. Then he looked at the door. Greene arrived with 3 attorneys and 2 aides. That walk, that posture, the practiced confidence of someone who has been in hostile rooms before. She sat down at the witness table and she looked across at Edwards. He was already looking at her. Not with the prosecutorial patience of a Schiff or the constitutional precision of a Cheney. With something simpler. The direct, undecorated look of someone who has something specific to say and is going to say it. Greene checked her phone. She looked around the room. She was ready for the standard format: documents, dates, voting records. She thought she knew the shape of this. She did not know that the 3 documents on Edwards's table were her own posts, his own press release, and a death toll. The first 15 minutes were procedural. Committee counsel handled background questions. Standard framing. Greene answered each one with practiced efficiency, short, clean, no openings. She looked comfortable, relaxed. She thought the worst was behind her. Then Chuck Edwards took the microphone. Congresswoman Greene. The room shifted in the particular way it shifts when the person asking the question is not performing, not building toward a rhetorical peak. not establishing a legal case, just a man from a mountain district with something to say. Greene looked up. "I want to start with a date." Edwards reached into his documents. He pulled out the first one and placed it flat on the table. October 3rd, 2024. He looked at it. Then he looked at Greene. On that date, Hurricane Helene had been making its way through the southeastern United States for 6 days. At least 180 people had already been confirmed dead. Rescue crews were still working in my district, in Buncombe County, in McDowell County, in Yancey County. People were still missing. Families were still waiting by phones. He looked at Greene. On that date, you posted this. He held up the first document, a printed screenshot of Greene's October 3rd post, a map of the Southeast with Helene's path overlaid on county-level electoral results, mostly red. He read the caption she had written beneath it. This is a map of hurricane-affected areas with an overlay of electoral map by political party shows how hurricane devastation could affect the election. He set it back down. He looked at her. While my constituents were being pulled from floodwater, you posted a map suggesting the storm's path was politically significant. Greene's lead attorney shifted slightly. Greene did not look at him. She was looking at Edwards. Her expression was controlled. She had her response ready. She had given versions of it before. The map spoke for itself. People deserved to know how the storm affected different communities. She had said those things. Edwards did not wait for her response. He reached for the second document. He held it up. October 4th, 2024. 1 day later. He read from it. Yes, they can control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done. He set it down. He looked at Greene. 7 words. The day after you posted the electoral map. The day after 200 people were confirmed dead. He paused. You told the country that someone had controlled the weather. He looked at her directly. Who is they? The room was very still. Greene's voice, when it came, was flat and controlled. Congressman Edwards. Oh, the posts you are referencing were raising legitimate questions about emerging technologies, including cloud seeding and atmospheric intervention programs that have been documented by multiple government agencies. I was not making a specific accusation. I was asking questions that the American people deserve to have answered. Edwards looked at her for a moment. He wrote 1 word on his notepad. Then he looked up. He did not raise his voice. He did not lean forward dramatically. He just looked at her with the steady directness of someone who has spent the last several days talking to people who lost everything. Yes, they can control the weather. He said it quietly. That is not a question. That is a statement. He picked up her post. He held it up. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done. He set it down. That is also not a question. He looked at Greene. You stated as fact that they can control the weather. He paused. I would like to know who they are. If you have made it this far and this matters to you, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. What Edwards reads next is the document that no one in that room was fully prepared to hear out loud. Stay with this until the end. Greene's second attorney leaned forward. Greene was listening. Her jaw moved slightly. Then she said, Congressman, atmospheric manipulation programs exist. The U.S. government has acknowledged programs related to weather modification. The Chinese government has a large-scale weather modification program. These are documented facts. I was raising awareness of existing technologies and asking whether they could be relevant to what we were seeing. Edwards looked at her. He did not respond immediately. He reached for the third document. He held it up. He set it flat on the table, facing the cameras. This is a press release I published from my congressional office on October 8, 2024. He opened it. He found the relevant section. He read from it. Nobody can control the weather. The director of the Federal Weather Agency has confirmed that no one has the technology or ability to geoengineer a hurricane. Current technology can mitigate weather, but cannot create or manipulate hurricanes. He set the press release down next to Greene's two posts. 3 documents, side by side. He looked at Greene. The Federal Weather Agency. He said the name quietly. The federal agency that tracks hurricanes, that monitors weather, that employs the scientists who understand atmospheric systems. He picked up her post. Yes, they can control the weather. He set it down. He picked up the Federal Weather Agency statement. No one has the technology or ability to geoengineer a hurricane. He set it down. He looked at Greene. One of those 2 statements is true. He paused. Which one? Now I need to stop for a second. If you believe that members of Congress should not be allowed to promote conspiracy theories about natural disasters while those disasters are still killing people, hype this video right now. The hype button is right next to like. You can hype 3 times a day for free. We have 7 days to get this into the top 100 most hyped videos on YouTube. Every single hype counts. Do it now. Then keep watching, because what Greene says next is the answer that makes everything worse. Greene's lead attorney was on his feet. Congressman Edwards, my client has the right to raise questions about government programs and technologies without being required to defer to any single agency's characterization of those programs. The Federal Weather Agency statement you cited addresses one specific technology. My client's posts raised broader questions that deserve public consideration. I am going to stop you there. Edwards held up one hand, the same quiet stop gesture. Patient, unhurried. He looked at the attorney. The Federal Weather Agency statement does not address one specific technology. He picked it up. It says, and I will read it again, no one has the technology or ability to geoengineer a hurricane. He set it down. That is a categorical statement from the federal agency responsible for tracking hurricanes. He looked at Greene. Not one specific technology. Any technology. Nobody. He paused. He looked at Greene directly. Your colleague, Carlos Gimenez from Florida, said humans cannot create or control hurricanes. Your colleague, Mike Lawler from New York, said, of course, no one can control the weather. I published a press release saying nobody can control the weather. He paused. 3 Republicans, 1 federal agency, all saying the same thing. He looked at Greene. And while all of us were saying that, 64 of my constituents in western North Carolina were dead. He let that number sit in the room for a moment. 64? He said it again. 64 people from my district. Dead. He looked at Greene. And you were posting a map suggesting their deaths were politically engineered. 49 seconds. A committee aide in the back of the room counted it. A journalist in the front row confirmed the number with a colleague. 49 seconds where Marjorie Taylor Greene, who had posted those words publicly without a moment of hesitation, who had doubled down on them when the backlash came, who had continued making similar statements as Hurricane Milton followed Helene days later, said absolutely nothing. Her hands were on the table. Her attorneys were both still. The room was so quiet you could hear the fluorescent lights above the press gallery. Because Edwards had not asked a political question. He had not built a legal case. He had just set 3 documents side by side and read them out loud. Her post, the Federal Weather Agency statement, his press release with the death toll from his own district. And then he had asked which one was true. Drop a comment right now. Tell me what 49 seconds of silence from someone who posted 7 words about weather control without a second of hesitation means when she is finally asked to defend them in a room with the man whose constituents were dying while she posted. When Greene finally spoke, her voice was quieter than it had been at any point in the morning. Congressman Edwards, I am deeply sorry for the losses that the people of Western North Carolina have suffered. Hurricane Helene was a devastating storm, and the people affected by it have my full support and sympathy. She paused. The posts you are referencing were raising questions that I believed deserved public attention. I was not suggesting that anyone deliberately targeted your constituents. I was raising awareness of technologies that exist and asking whether there were questions worth asking. Edwards looked at her for a long moment. He did not write anything on his notepad. He just looked at her. Then he picked up her October 4th post one more time. He read it one more time, quietly. Yes, they can control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done. He set it down. He looked at Greene. You said it is ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done. He paused. That is not raising a question. That is calling people liars. He picked up the Federal Weather Agency statement. The director of the Federal Weather Agency says it cannot be done. He set it down. He looked at Greene. Are you calling the director of the Federal Weather Agency a liar? Greene did not answer. Edwards did not wait long. He gathered his 3 documents. He placed them back in a neat stack. He looked at them for a moment. Then he looked at Greene one final time. He said, in a voice that was very quiet and very direct, I came here today not to score political points. He picked up the stack. I came because 64 people from my district are dead. Because thousands more lost their homes. Because for days after that storm, people in Buncombe County and McDowell County and Yancey County were without power and water and cell service. He set the stack down, and while that was happening, someone with a congressional platform posted a map suggesting their suffering was politically engineered. He looked at her. Those people deserved better than that. He picked up the stack one final time. These documents will be entered into the congressional record today. Your posts, the Federal Weather Agency statement, the death toll from my district. He stood from his seat slightly, a small, deliberate motion, side by side, permanently, so that anyone who wants to understand what was said about Hurricane Helene while people were dying can read it for themselves. He set the stack down, and reached their own conclusion. He stepped back from the microphone. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. The hearing room held a different kind of silence after Edwards sat back down. Not the charged political silence of a confrontation, not the dramatic silence of a revelation, just the quiet of a room that has heard something true said plainly and is sitting with the weight of it. Other committee members asked other questions, procedural matters, standard oversight business. None of it reached the temperature of what had just happened in those 18 minutes, because Chuck Edwards had walked into that room without a strategy, without a case to build, just 3 documents and the specific, the unglamorous grief of a man from a mountain district trying to explain what it felt like to watch his constituents' deaths become the backdrop for a conspiracy theory. Within the hour, the clips were everywhere. Edwards reading Greene's posts out loud, Edwards setting the Federal Weather Agency statement next to the posts, Edwards saying 64 people from my district are dead, the 49 seconds of silence. And then Greene's apology for the losses followed immediately by her defense of the posts. Emergency management experts were already noting that conspiracy theories about weather engineering had significantly complicated rescue and relief efforts in western North Carolina in the days after Helene, with some residents refusing assistance from federal agencies they had been told were responsible for the storm. May scientists from the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center were discussing whether congressional statements of this kind created measurable public health risks during disaster response periods. And in the mountains of western North Carolina, where the cleanup from Helene was still ongoing, people who had lost everything were watching a clip of their representative sitting across from the woman who had suggested their suffering was engineered and asking her to explain why. This is not about meteorology. This is not about the science of cloud seeding or atmospheric intervention. This is about a specific choice. While rescue crews were working, while families were waiting, while 227 people were in the process of dying across 6 states, someone chose to post a map suggesting it was politically engineered, and then chose to say yes, they can control the weather. And when someone from the district where 64 of those people died asked for an explanation, the answer was 49 seconds of silence, followed by, "I was raising questions that deserved attention." 3 documents, 2 posts, 1 statement from the Federal Weather Agency, 1 death toll, and the man from the district that was still underwater asking for an answer that 49 seconds of silence and a defense of the posts could not provide. Share this video everywhere. All 3 documents are now in the congressional record. Greene's posts are public. The Federal Weather Agency statement is public. The death toll from western North Carolina is public. The 49 seconds of silence is in the record of this hearing. And the question Edwards asked, which one of these 2 statements is true, is permanently unanswered right next to the posts that prompted it. The people of western North Carolina deserved better than a conspiracy theory while they were drowning. They deserved better than 49 seconds of silence when someone finally asked for an explanation. Subscribe now, hit the bell. And if you missed Robert Garcia asking Greene to point to a single specific entry in Anthony Fauci's record that justified calling him a criminal, or Liz Cheney placing the martial law text message next to the sworn testimony that said, "I don't recall," watch those videos on screen right now. 9 hearings, 9 documents, 9 silences, the same pattern from 9 different directions. A public servant who said things she could not defend when someone finally asked her to defend them. 1 document at a time, 1 hearing at a time, 1 49-second silence at a time, 49 seconds, 3 documents, 2 posts, 1 death toll, 64 people from 1 congressional district, and the woman who said they can control the weather sitting in silence when asked which statement was true.